Welcome to Creating Calm Parenting with Mind, Body, and Spirit. I'm Corinne Cayce, your co-host. I am an integral leadership coach, a mother of two, and a lifelong student of the Edgar Cayce readings. And I'm here with my dear friend and co-host, Arlene. Hi, Arlene.
Hi, Corinne. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Arlene Diamco, an integrative physician, a pediatrician, and a cranial osteopath, and mom of four. And today we are going to talk about the Temple Beautiful, which is something that we had briefly talked about with Dr. Gladys McGarry in our last podcast, with a beautiful interview with her. And they had these Temple Beautiful programs, which were healing spaces, healing retreats that they had offered over a number of years. And so we thought with springtime and continue to talk about Dr. Gladys McGarry's living medicine, it would be such a beautiful conversation to talk about Temple Beautiful and how to incorporate creating this kind of healing space into your life, into your family's life, and what that means for all of us. So before we get started with that discussion, then Corinne's going to do our opening meditation.
Yes. Thanks so much, Arlene. So if you are able to close your eyes, please feel free to do so, or whatever you're doing and wherever you are, just let your attention turn inward for a moment and find your feet. Let your awareness travel all the way down to the soles of your feet, and then gently begin to scan your attention upward through your ankles and your shins, your knees, your thighs. Find your seat, your low belly. Feel the straightness of your spine. Let your attention encompass your whole torso, your ribs, your beating heart, your shoulders, your arms, your hands, your neck and throat, the back of your head, top of your head, and your whole face, forehead, cheeks, chin. And now find your breath. And take 3 deep cleansing breaths. All right, thank you so much. So, we have such an exciting conversation today about the Temple Beautiful as described in the Edgar Cayce readings, and as Arlene mentioned, as modernized and updated by Dr. Bill and Gladys McGarry in Arizona in their work with the A.R.E. clinic. And to frame that conversation for us, Arlene and I wanted to begin with a brief description from the Edgar Cayce readings on the Temple Beautiful, and also a description from some of the materials that the doctors McGarry were putting out when they were doing their Temple Beautiful program. So their sort of modernized description of what Temple Beautiful was and could be. So to begin, I'll read from reading 281-43. And this says, "The Temple Beautiful was of the mental, in which there was the spiritualization, not idolizing, but crystallizing of activities or services to a special purpose, or specializing in preparation for given offices of activities." So in addition, this comes from the 1982 program brochure that was put out by Dr. Bill and Gladys McGarry. And this says, 12,500 years ago, according to the Edgar Cayce readings, the Temple Beautiful was functioning as a place of preparation for wholeness of body and the process of purification to a state of higher awareness. This modern, or their modern, Temple Beautiful provides a residential program of activities designed for individuals who are seeking deeper personal spiritual insights and methods of achieving a healthier, more integrated physical body, and what may well be called an adventure in consciousness. The methods and activities, the treatments and therapies have all been tested in the A.R.E. Medical Clinic over a period of more than 2 decades and found to be beneficial. So, this is a great contextualization of many readings talked about this temple beautiful that was around 12,500 years ago as part of the Egyptian culture at that time. And there were health implications. Dr. Bill McGarry studied a lot, and they were integrating some of them into their work at the A.R.E. Medical Clinic. And then they decided to create this specific program that Dr. Gladys McGarry mentioned briefly, as Arlene said in her interview with us. In our last episode, but we wanted to kind of dive in and explore what is this wholeness of body and this process of kind of purifying and healing, and how can we create space for that in our daily, everyday life, and maybe kind of contextualize and gather together these things that we may already be doing some of, and maybe what are some new things that we can do to kind of really nurture this internal healing process that is both mental and emotional and also physical.
It's it's so neat what they did, and I'm just in awe of how many sessions that they did with this Temple Beautiful program, and,
Yeah.
they had outlined, like, 4 major components, and
Yeah.
one was insight, the second was education, the third was nutrition, and the fourth was exercise. So,
Mhm.
in our discussion, we thought we would focus on talking about insight because it is so rich in how they approached healing. And at that time, to create this space where they embraced this importance of insight, of purpose, of attuning your body, mind, spirit with your purpose, your deep why, or what Edgar Cayce calls
Mhm.
your ideal, and
Mhm.
infusing that into your whole being. And so when the readings say to crystallize that into the body, that's what it means to me. It's like taking your purpose and infusing it into your whole being so that all your thoughts, your words, your actions are all expressions of your purpose that is attuned with the creative forces, with the oneness.
Mhm.
And part of what they had mentioned in the readings was the importance of art, music, and dance. And it was interesting just, like, how they talked about it, and we know in, just in our modern understanding, like, how important artistic creative expression is for our own healing journeys, but to
Mhm.
take that up a level even, I don't wanna say level, but really infusing it more purposefully for healing
Mhm.
purposes, and I think I to me, that's what they when they say purification, that's what it means to purify. That's my understanding of it, is to take your purpose, your ideal, or your deep why, and infuse
Mhm.
it in your whole being, and then if you did that with experiencing any, artistic expression, art, dance, sculpture, if we think about for kids, coloring and drawing, then this becomes a living medicine, to use one of Dr. Gladys McGarry's terms, to
Mhm.
focus on being alive, a living medicine, more pure expression of that love and light from the creative forces.
Mhm. Yeah. And uh that there's really a way of viewing how we integrate that into our lives in really small ways. And so many of these things, both the insight pieces and the education and the nutrition and the exercise, these sort of core pillars of the Temple Beautiful, we've talked about in many different ways on so many of our podcast episodes, because they're sort of infused throughout the Edgar Cayce readings around how to come into alignment and wholeness. And this idea of crystallization is a word that's used in the readings that I feel like means something powerful that Arlene was touching on, where you're sort of fully embodying
Mhm.
this, almost at a physical level, this purpose or this be what it is that you're here to do, so that it like really holds you. And that process of crystallization, I think, is part of the purpose of the temple beautiful, is what the Edgar Cayce readings are saying. So I think there's something powerful around gathering together all of these different ways that we're caring for ourselves and things that we're doing, ways that we're trying to nurture our families under this umbrella of this temple beautiful idea, that it's this healing, precious, sort of sacred internal space within us as individuals. As the reading said at the beginning, that the temple beautiful is a mental experience, and the body as a temple, and something precious that's happening, and also something collective that's happened. What the programs that the McGarrys were running were residential programs where people were coming and living for 17 days together. There was something incredibly powerful about that group experience. And we in our families can have something very similar to that if we kind of want to, and set that intention of like, here are special times, special ways, special things that we're doing that kind of help us move toward healing and wholeness together. And this focus on the insight idea of the temple beautiful, and this element of creativity as a way to integrate and connect and heal and let go of things. I mean, there's so much what Arlene you were saying around like what
Mhm.
we've learned psychologically in
Mhm.
medicine and science around creativity as this essential component to our healing process. But maybe we can talk a little bit about what that could look like in our daily lives and today. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, it was actually a literal call for embodiment of your purpose. That's the crystallization. So,
Yeah.
when I read that, it's not even an metaphorical. I was like, this is a literal embodiment, because if you think
Mhm.
of your body as your sacred, home for this lifetime,
Yeah.
your body is also this beautiful instrument for living, for
Yeah.
manifestation. And your body is meant to sing with you, and that's part
Yeah.
of the attunement with your purpose. And when I teach this course for the osteopaths, I talk about the bones and then the ribs as like the strings for a musical instrument. And so when it's in harmony, then you
Mhm.
have this literal embodiment, which feels good, not just mentally, emotionally, but feels good physically, because the body is more harmonious,
Mhm.
with your mind, with your spirit, with your purpose. And
Mhm.
so, like simple things that you could do with that, what we mentioned, just like dancing, swaying to the music more purposely.
Mhm.
So, feeling that flow within you. But you could also do it through sound, like
Mhm.
making vocalizations. And I've talked about this before about, and in the Edgar Cayce readings, he talks about the alming sound, or the R.E. And when
Mhm.
you make those kind of vowel sounds, it is the primordial sound of the universe. And so to let that vibration infuse through your cells, then it
Mhm.
tunes your cells to our own nature, which is love and light. And so, if you I'll do this for myself too. If I ever feel a bit off, or I feel like I start getting thought loops, like I'm worrying about something, or
Mhm.
there's something I just can't get out of my head. So a thought loop is a short circuit. It's just your mind like looping around something, which is inefficient, and it's
Mhm.
not free flowing thought. So
Mhm.
I might use a humming sound or an alming sound to literally ground and create more flow through my body and crystallize this vibration that's more of my true essence in nature, that's more attuned with the
Mhm.
creative force, with the universe. And so
Mhm.
it feels like it sort of shakes out any um, any of those like static or bumps in the road. And so
Mhm.
that's something that you could do. And it could just be making
Mhm.
vowel sounds. It could just be humming. Humming has
Totally.
so many benefits to the body. And I mean, if you're just sitting in the car with your kids and waiting for something, then you could just
Mhm.
hum a tune together, or sing.
Yeah,
They're all like really great for your body to be able to hear yourself, to hear your own voice. And so to do that
absolutely.
purposefully.
Yeah, that came to mind for me as well, like, when you're riding in the car, humming, singing along, like, just doing it, and see if your kids wanna do it too, or intentionally doing it together. I know before meals is another wonderful time, like we've talked about on this podcast before, like, oming as a blessing before, or singing a little song together before meals, or at any just sort of noticing as we move through our days, when are some natural times if we're noticing a tightening or a short circuit, like Arlene was talking about, where we're kind of either in our own minds trapped in a certain pattern, or we're noticing a certain dynamic that we may be trapped in our families around bickering or rushing, or, you know, wanting to try and shift things. Kids are on screen, you're trying to come back together, just starting to hum or sing, or, even if you're
Mhm.
even if it's a little uncomfortable at the beginning, kind of leading by example in that way, and just noticing, does this work? Might this be a good way to do this, or time to do it? And kind of trusting the body as instrument, as Arlene was so beautifully describing, to kind of help us move toward a shift in what the energy feels like. Yeah. So kind of giving into that, and listening to music too, right? Like if there are beautiful songs, or instrumental music, or chanting or singing that you like, kind of remembering to turn that on, and just inviting that space and that energetic sense during the day or in the car can be helpful too, bringing some intention to the way that we're using sound in that way. And then something else that was really interesting, an interesting activity that was part of this insight piece, both, you know, centuries ago in Egypt, and also in Arizona with the McGarrys, was this working with life seal, which is art,
Mhm.
deeply an artistic process, which is something that maybe we can touch on briefly, Arlene, just in terms of how it may integrate this into our lives.
Oh, yeah, I love that conversation of a life seal. It was a circle, and
Mhm,
within the circle are drawings or artistic renditions of what represents you, your
mhm,
essence. So
mhm,
it's, your life seal, and, so everyone is unique, and you it could be mandala-like, but it doesn't have to have that particular symmetry. It's
mhm,
whatever you can put anything into that circle that represents you, and I feel like that is such a beautiful, yet simple exercise that you could do with your kids. And, I've heard other people talk about this too. So if you are stuck on a problem, to take a break and then to draw some shapes. And so to maybe draw a circle, and
mhm,
you could draw shapes within that, and then to draw whatever you want within those shapes. And then to take a break and see what kinds of connections you've made with your drawings, like whatever you've drawn. And then after that, to not think about anything, to so whatever your thought loop or your worry was, so that drawing exercise is to help to smooth out your thought loops, to ground them, to create more fluid
mhm,
thinking. But then you take a break, and so this simple activity of creating something with drawing that represents you, that has connections in your life, can help you. And then so when you go back to your problem, it's supposed to
mhm,
be much more fluid, and, it's
mhm,
a great exercise to do. So anytime you feel stuck, or you just feel like you need more fluid thought, or if you just want to be more purposeful in how
mhm,
you move through the world, then this is something that you can do. And another example of what I feel like is like creating a life seal is Peter Reynolds' book,
mhm,
Dot. It's a kid's picture book, and this girl who is in art class, and she doesn't think she's good at any art. So her art teacher says to just make a dot. And so
mhm,
she makes a dot, and her teacher says, "Okay, now sign it." And then her teacher hung it up on the wall the next day, and she was so impressed that she was like, "Well, that was easy." So she thought, well, I'll make another dot and a bigger dot, or different like different representations of the circle of the dot. And so with that, she found that she was in fact an artist. It was in fact a creative person, and just like her
Mhm.
teacher encouraged and kind of drew that out of her. So these exercises in creating a life seal could be that for you. Could be
Mhm.
that dot exercise
Mhm.
from.
Mhm.
So if you haven't read that book, it's a great one to flip through, and you could do this easily with kids all ages,
Mhm.
because what it looks like at different ages will be different. It's like when they create their self-image of themselves, a self-portrait, and you see it
Yeah.
through the years and get to see how it changes. So
Yeah.
perhaps your life seal changes, just like how when you create your ideal, your purpose, it could change from
Mhm.
more quickly, or it could change over years. It just, there's not necessarily
Absolutely.
a right or wrong to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this idea of coming up with images or symbols that kind of represent who we are and what we find meaningful, where we find joy, and making it artistic so that there's an image rather than necessarily a word, and inviting our children, our family into that space, I think is pretty powerful. And kind of playing around with it and taking time to figure it out. I feel like what's coming to mind for me, and doing this individually for our kids, it can be a conversation and then an invitation to draw and begin to think about it. And we can also do it collectively as a family. Like if we were to make a life seal for our family, what would be some of the images or symbols that would really represent us? Like, how could we have people get to know us in this way, and just the richness of the conversation that may come out of that. And then taking turns drawing different things, and trusting that that process of having it not be as left brain, but more of a right brain, creative, imaginative process allows it to sink into, feeds into that crystallization process that we were talking about, that allows our sense of knowing ourselves to be who we are and feeling safe to be seen in the world that way, and also held within a family circle, is powerful, and that we can trust that and kind of know that that's creating a strong foundation in our children and in ourselves, and that the process alone is healing and moving us toward wholeness, and is part of this adventure in consciousness that the McGarrys so beautifully, I love that term, of exploring that there is some mystery here to this, and that it's an invitation to really deeply bring ourselves into alignment and wholeness that feels good, as Arlene was saying. Like we feel joy, we feel alive. And I know that's something that as parents is just, at our highest priority in so many ways: happiness, health, well-being, thriving. We're looking for that. And these sort of temple beautiful activities are designed to feed that and grow it. So we're talking about some of these artistic things that maybe we haven't dived as deeply into in this podcast before, but there are other aspects of this insight that we have spent a lot of time with and that we have been exploring, like meditation and mindfulness, and exploring your dreams, doing dream work, taking the time to remember your dreams, to talk about them together, to write them down, and kind of begin to interpret them or find meaning for them in terms of the guidance that they can offer in your lives, and working with um, movement and dance, like we've been talking about, journaling. And then, so are there other aspects to insight that we want to dive into, Arlene, or shall we touch on the
Well,
other sort of pillars?
Well, I
Yeah.
was thinking about what you said about the family life seal, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, I was like, "Oh, that would be such a great idea." I've always wanted to do something like that, and I have a wall for
Yeah.
it, and to be able to create a family piece of artwork, but now to do it as a family life seal, and,
Totally.
um and artists do that, these, just experiences with that, where you could literally just pass it around the table. Like one person
Totally.
does one thing and you pass it, and they
I know.
add to the creation and just keep doing that until it seems to
I know.
fill itself out.
I
And
know.
I've seen that for I just went to City Hall the other day, and I saw their artworks from different years that were community artworks.
Yeah.
And so just
Yeah.
different representations of that life
Mhm.
seal, and I feel
Yeah.
that would give a really great energy to the home because it's so
Absolutely.
purposeful and a great reminder every day
Yeah. Yeah,
of what
absolutely,
that
and
is.
I feel like our children, as they go out in the world and we can feel so much sort of fear and awareness of all of the complexities and threats and struggles and things that they're gonna be engaging with, feeling empowered as parents to sort of trust and know that we're giving them that we're creating safety for them in any way that we can. That doesn't necessarily have to mean going out in front of them and patting down the grass so that there's a clear way for them to go and, micromanaging all of the interactions and aspects of their lives that we can't control, but kind of in the home, taking the time in the home to just do these things that maybe are outside of. I mean, I think as parents, so often we struggle with, I know we've talked about this in our parenting group at the A.R.E, like, we lecture sometimes, right? We go into like lecture mode or preaching mode to our kids and their eyes kind of glaze over and they're like, and they
Mhm.
want to like move away from it, and there's only so much talking or they're too little to really understand and kind of, well, how can we connect? How can we help them have what they need? And this life seal work and this the art and music is just, I feel like, a totally unique and different way to come at it. I'm literally thinking of my dinner table where we're sitting around it and my son wants to either be reading or playing a game the entire time. Like he is not interested in chatting about his day or figuring out anything. And my daughter, meanwhile, could live in that space of like, oh, this happened today. What happened with you? What's going on? Let's chat about it. So we're trying to kind of navigate the different energies. And, my husband and I are unwinding and I feel like it's possible, we'll see, maybe I can check back in, this, like, life steal activity could, like, meet on all fronts of, like, it's kind of game-like, it's an activity, like, we're doing something, we're not just chatting, but in some way, we really are talking about meaningful things around our family and who we are and, sharing stories and that sense of identity and will and knowing who they are is just, I think, one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children. We've certainly touched on
This
that
can
before
This
together.
can work any age because my daughter, my oldest, who's in college, came and she brought 3 friends home from college the other weekend.
Yeah.
It was a holiday weekend, it was Easter weekend. So, I had this idea. I got these placemats that were coloring placemats. I mean, they're for
Yeah.
little kids, but I put them out for
Yeah.
everybody, and we put, like, nice markers out so that they could color them,
Yeah.
and it was a really great activity, like,
Yeah.
just while they were waiting for everything to come out, and then they could just be, filling out their placemats, and
Totally.
I was happy. It was, like, what I had hoped for it to be because I was like, "Well, if they use them, otherwise they're just a placemat," but everyone, every age, like, colored
Yeah.
their placemats. So,
Yeah.
I'm just taking that as, like, a smaller activity, but then you can expand on that and then
Totally.
make it right? So, it's like instead
Yeah.
of a placemat, it's like, we'll just take some sort of canvas or paper, make a
Mhm.
circle, and then color with it, and that could pass around the
Mhm.
table, and, honestly, like, I feel like it would just be a great bonding activity. You don't have to necessarily call it a life seal every time, just it just helps to integrate the family and energy. So, like you said, not everybody wants to communicate through so many words,
Mhm.
and, but this gives a way to communicate and to share and to, be a part of, like, a family activity without much pressure.
Yeah.
It's just like what Peter Reynolds' book, it's like, put whatever you want, put a dot, just start with that, just put a dot and then go from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so there's some uh, ideas for working with this insight element of the temple beautiful and really cultivating and allowing those parts of ourselves and our families to come to the forefront, be elevated and explored. And so just to retouch on the other pillars as we wrap up here, there's like this education component of like continuing to learn and to deepen, and that looked very specific in a retreat sort of residential setting and in our own families and our personal lives, that kind of feeding and nurturing of reading, listening, training, connecting, like growing that parts of ourselves that are interested and curious and longing for depth of spiritual awakening or health awakening or sort of anything, what we're wanting to learn about. And then nutrition, which we spend a lot of time on different elements of that on this podcast for sure. So the acid alkaline episode, we just did one recently on food combinations and all of those, sort of really thinking about what we're putting in our body and how to grow and deepen there. And then exercise and movement, which we've touched on in other ways as well, and plays in with the dance, is brought out a
Mhm.
little bit there, but making sure that we're moving our bodies intentionally. And the way this worked in Temple Beautiful with the McGarrys, there was the physical movement that we're doing, walking, whatever exercise is looking good for us, and then the more passive exercise where we're getting massage, cranial osteopathy, where we're having
Mhm.
m where we're taking care of our bodies in that way, and what an important part of health and wholeness that that is for us as well.
Yes, the mindful component of exercise is the key there.
Yeah,
Um, that's what I find if people are moving, but they're not moving mindfully, consciously, so it's a full, um, embodiment of what you're thinking, and what you're doing, feeling. So,
yeah,
that actually helps people to avoid injury because their
yeah,
movement is much more harmonious. So, like if you go for a walk to make it more a mindful walk, like instead of going through your to-do list to notice what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell, the feel of your feet moving across the ground. So, those little suggestions too, and
mm,
that can be incorporated easily into your life.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. So hopefully there's some material that's been here. I know for me, I've lots of ideas and wonderful spring things to work with of kind of really holding this place in my own life and in my family's life for wholeness and healing and attuning that crystallization of trusting that we know why we're here and what we're doing. And we hope for you all as well. And so much gratitude to Dr. Gladys McGarry and the late Dr. Bill McGarry for their work in modernizing the Temple Beautiful and moving forward with the living medicine work that Dr. McGarry is doing now, and we'll continue to modernize it as we move forward from here. I'm sure. So
Absolutely.
helpful.
Yes, we have so many more ideas for it, so
I know.
here's to more things to unfold.
More, more things to come. That's right. Such a joy to be with you as always, Arlene.
Thanks, Corinne. You too, and thanks everyone for listening.